Captain Jin-Woo Park stood at the back of the massive council chamber, watching 12 different alien species decide humanity's fate. The room was built like an arena, with curved walls that rose high above the floor. Each species had their own section, marked by symbols he had learned to recognize during his years serving the Galactic Council. The hierarchy sat at the center, their tall blue forms perfectly still. They had called this meeting. Around them, the other council members waited in their assigned places. The insect-like Mantari clicked their claws against metal. The gas-breathing Neptari floated in their sealed tanks. The Zelani, looking almost human but with silver skin, sat quietly in their corner. Jin-Woo had served the council for 15 years. He had fought their battles, protected their trade routes, and followed their orders without question. Now he watched them discuss his species like a disease that needed to be removed. High Arbiter Zeth Val of the hierarchy stood at the center podium. Their voice filled the chamber through translation devices. We have gathered to address the human problem. After 200 years of contact, we can no longer ignore the facts. Humans are incompatible with civilized society. Jin-Woo felt his hands clench into fists. He forced them to relax. Even now, showing emotion would only prove their point. The Arbiter continued. Humans refuse to follow proper order. They question authority. They make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. Worst of all, they spread these dangerous ideas to other species. A Mantari representative rose from their section. The human colony on Kepler 186F has corrupted 3 of our worker castes. They now demand individual rights instead of serving the hive mind properly. Human traders have introduced chaos to our economic systems, added a Neptari through their communication device. They make deals based on friendship and trust, instead of following proper contract protocols. Jin-Woo remembered those deals. Human traders had saved that Neptari colony when their supply ships were late. They had shared food and medicine without asking for payment first. The Neptari had called it chaos. Jin-Woo called it helping neighbors. Dr. Sarah Kim sat in the human observation section, taking notes on her tablet. She was the best xenobiologist in known space, but the council had already dismissed her research. Her studies showed that human emotional responses actually helped them adapt faster than other species. The council called it chaotic theorizing. The hierarchy arbiter pulled up holographic displays showing human settlements across council space. Look at these colonies. No proper city planning. Mixed species, working together, without regard for biological compatibility. Children from different species playing together, as if they were equals. Jin-Woo had visited those colonies. They were some of the happiest places he had ever seen. Humans had a gift for bringing different species together. A Mantari could work alongside a Neptari and a human, each using their unique abilities for the good of all. Children grew up learning from teachers of every species, becoming more than any single species could be alone. We have tried to educate humans in proper behavior, the arbiter said. We have sent advisors to teach them correct social structure. We have provided them with detailed protocols for interaction with other species. They ignore our guidance and continue to spread their chaotic influence. A new voice joined the debate. The Zelani representative, Counselor Nara Lin, stood slowly. Perhaps we should consider that human methods produce positive results. Their colonies have the lowest crime rates in council space. Their mixed communities show remarkable innovation and problem-solving abilities. The arbiter's blue skin darkened with anger. Counselor Nara Lin, your species has always been too sympathetic to disorder. The results are irrelevant if the methods threaten the stability of our civilization. Jin-Woo watched the other council members. The vegan collective nodded agreement with the hierarchy. The crystalline assembly's geometric patterns shifted to show support. One by one, species that humans had helped and protected turned against them. We call for a formal vote, the arbiter announced. Should humanity be declared incompatible with galactic civilization and banished from council space? The voting began with the familiar ritual. Each species announced their decision in order of seniority. The hierarchy voted first. As always, banishment. The word echoed through the chamber. The Mantari followed. Banishment. Then, the Neptari. Banishment. The Vegan Collective. The Crystalline Assembly. The Thermal Communes. All voted the same way. Species after species condemned humanity to exile. Jinwoo felt something break inside his chest. These were allies he had fought beside. Species he had saved. Citizens he had protected. They were throwing away 2 centuries of partnership because humans refused to become emotionless machines. Finally, only the Zilani remained. Counselor Nara Lin stood for a long time before speaking. The Zilani Confederation abstains from this vote. The Zilani Confederation. The arbiter's voice carried satisfaction. 11 votes for banishment. 0 against. 1 abstention. The motion passes. Humanity is declared incompatible with galactic civilization. All humans must leave council space within 90 standard days. The chamber erupted in discussion among the various species. Jinwoo barely heard it. 90 days. 90 days. For billions of humans to abandon the only homes they had known for 2 centuries. Dr. Kim appeared beside him. Her dark eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. Captain, we need to start organizing the evacuation. The transport ships. I know, Jinwoo said quietly. He looked around the chamber one last time. Gather the fleet commanders. We have work to do. As they walked toward the exit, Jinwoo thought about the outer rim. Beyond council space lay vast regions that no major power had claimed. Dangerous worlds, hostile aliens, and unknown threats waited there. The council had always called it a wasteland, fit only for outlaws and refugees. Maybe that was exactly what humanity needed to become. The massive chamber doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. Jinwoo Park, former captain of the Galactic Council Defense Force, began planning humanity's exodus into exile. He had no idea that in doing so, he was about to change the galaxy forever. 3 months after the banishment, Jinwoo Park stood on the observation deck of the colony ship Times New Sol Asterisk. Outside the viewport, the red dwarf star Kepler 438 cast bloody light across his new home world. The planet looked angry from space, with brown continents and green oceans under thick clouds. Captain, we're getting the first surface reports. Communications Officer Lisa Chen announced from her station. Jinwoo walked over to read the displays. The news was not good. The planet's atmosphere had too much sulfur dioxide. The rain was acidic enough to eat through standard building materials. Strange crystal formations covered most of the land, and early scans suggested they might be alive. How many people do we have on the surface? Jinwoo asked. 15,000, sir. Dr. Kim's team is setting up the first research station near the landing zone. Jinwoo nodded. 15,000 people depending on him to make this work. Around the star system, 7 other colony ships carried more refugees. Each ship had found its own world to settle. Humanity was spreading across the outer rim like seeds in the wind. On the planet's surface, Dr. Sarah Kim knelt beside one of the crystal formations. It was beautiful in an alien way, growing in spirals that hurt to look at directly. Her instruments showed it was definitely alive, but unlike any life form in council databases. Be careful with that, Engineer Marcus Chen called from nearby. He was assembling a shelter, using materials they had brought from Earth. The acid rain had already started eating holes in the standard council-issue equipment. It's fascinating, Sarah said, not moving away from the crystal. Look at how it grows. No pattern we understand, but it's definitely responding to stimuli. Marcus paused in his work. Responding how? Watch. Sarah placed her hand near the crystal without touching it. The spiral structure shifted slightly, growing toward her hand. It seems attracted to body heat. Or maybe electrical fields from our nervous system. A drop of acid rain hit Marcus's shelter frame, leaving a smoking hole. Great. Alien crystals that want to touch us. And rain that melts our equipment. This is going to be fun. But Sarah was smiling. Don't you see? This is exactly why the council exiled us. They would look at this crystal, catalog it, and file a report recommending minimum contact. We see a puzzle to solve. Over the following weeks, the human settlements faced crisis after crisis. The acid rain destroyed half their equipment. Local plant life turned out to be carnivorous. The crystal formations grew larger and more active as more humans arrived. On the mining world designated Kepler 442c, Admiral Haijin Lee dealt with different problems. The planet was rich in metals, but the native population did not appreciate human presence. The Vorthak were living crystals themselves, towering beings that communicated through harmonic vibrations. The first contact had gone badly. Council protocols demanded formal diplomatic procedures, with proper ranks and ceremony. Lee had tried following the rules, sending messages through official channels and requesting formal meetings. The Vorthak had responded by making the ground shake until the human landing shuttles crashed. "Ma'am, should we request military backup from the fleet?" asked Lieutenant Zhang. Lee studied the tactical displays. 3,000 humans on the surface, surrounded by beings who could apparently control the planet itself. Traditional military thinking said retreat and call for reinforcements. But they had nowhere to retreat to. "No," Lee said finally. "Get me a small team. We're going to try something different." Instead of formal protocols, Lee walked to the nearest Vorthak settlement with just 2 Marines and a translator. She carried no weapons, wore no military insignia. When the crystalline beings confronted her, she did something no council diplomat would ever do. She sat down on the ground and began to sing. It was an old Korean lullaby her grandmother had taught her. Simple words about stars and dreams. The Vorthak stopped their threatening vibrations and listened. When she finished, one of them came closer and made a sound like wind chimes. The translator worked frantically with her equipment. I think it's asking you to sing again." By the end of the week, Admiral Lee had negotiated the first human-Vorthak cooperation treaty. Not through formal diplomacy, but through music. The Vorthak found human emotional expression fascinating. In return for songs and stories, they agreed to help the humans mine rare metals safely. Back on Kepler 438b, Marcus Chen made his own breakthrough. The acid rain had destroyed all their council standard equipment, but Marcus had grown up fixing things with whatever materials he could find. Instead of fighting the environment, he decided to work with it. He created new building materials using the living crystals. When properly treated, they grew into exactly the shapes humans needed. The crystal structures seemed to enjoy being useful. They grew stronger when people lived inside them, and they actually neutralized the acid rain. The crystals are symbiotic, Sarah explained to Jinwoo during one of their regular communication sessions. They feed on electromagnetic energy from human nervous systems. In return, they provide shelter and protection. And the council would have missed this because they would never have lived close enough to the crystals to discover the symbiosis. Their protocols would have kept them at safe distances in sterile habitats. Jinwoo looked at the reports from all the human settlements. On every world, the same pattern was emerging. Humans were not just surviving the hostile outer rim, they were finding ways to thrive by embracing the dangers instead of avoiding them. On Proxima Centauri b, human colonists had befriended the pack-hunting predators by joining their hunts. On Trappist 1e, they had learned to breathe the methane atmosphere using modified bacteria. Each world presented impossible challenges, and each human settlement found impossible solutions. "Sir," Communications Officer Chen interrupted his thoughts. "We're receiving a transmission from Council Space. It's from the Zelani Confederation." Jinwoo felt his heart rate increase. "Put it through." Counselor Nara Lynn's silver face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, and there was something desperate in her expression. Captain Park, I hope this message reaches you safely. I need to tell you something important. 3 council species have formally requested information about human settlement methods. They want to know how you're succeeding in the Outer Rim. She paused, looking around nervously. The hierarchy is not pleased. They expected you to fail within months. Instead, our intelligence reports show your colonies are growing stronger every day. Some council members are beginning to question whether banishment was the right decision. The transmission ended abruptly. Jin Woo stared at the blank screen, thinking about what this meant. The council had exiled humanity to prove their way was wrong. Instead, they had accidentally given humanity the freedom to prove their way was better. On the planet below, acid rain fell on crystal cities that sang with human voices. In the Outer Rim, humanity was learning to be more human than they had ever been allowed to be in council space. And someone was watching. 5 years had passed since the banishment. Jin Woo Park, now called President Park by the growing human settlements, walked through the crystal gardens of New Seoul City. The living crystal structures had grown into beautiful spires that hummed with harmonious music when the wind blew through them. Children played in the streets below. Human children. But also young Vorthak, who had come with their families to learn from the humans. A few Zilani children were there too, their silver skin glinting in the red sunlight. Their parents had quietly immigrated to human space over the past 2 years. The latest reports, Mr. President, Dr. Sarah Kim said, approaching with her usual stack of data tablets. She had become his chief advisor on interspecies relations, though her official title was Director of Adaptive Sciences. Jin Woo took the tablets and read through them as they walked. The numbers were remarkable. 47 human settlements across the Outer Rim. Total population: 12 million humans, and growing. Alliance treaties with 16 different species that the Council had never even contacted. The Vorthak mining operations are exceeding all projections, Sarah continued. Admiral Lee's cooperative approach is producing 3 times more rare metals than traditional extraction methods. And the military situation? That's the interesting part. We've had 0 conflicts with neighboring species in 18 months. Admiral Lee's defense strategy seems to be working. Jin Woo smiled at that. Hai Jin Lee had revolutionized human military thinking by throwing out the Council's standard tactics. Instead of rigid formations and predictable strategies, she had developed something she called adaptive response doctrine. Human fleets moved in patterns that seemed chaotic to outside observers, but made perfect sense to the crews involved. Each ship captain was trained to think independently and respond to changing situations in real time. Communication happened through rapid emotional exchanges rather than formal command structures. The result was military units that could coordinate in ways that confused and frustrated traditional opponents. More importantly, they were so unpredictable that most potential enemies chose to negotiate rather than fight. What about the Outer Rim Confederation? Jin Woo asked. Ambassador Rodriguez reports that 7 more species have requested membership this month. The Crystalline Echoes, the Thermal Dancers, even a splinter group from the Neptari Collective. Elena Rodriguez had surprised everyone by becoming humanity's most effective diplomat. She had started as a council bureaucrat, but exile had revealed her true talents. Instead of formal treaties and rigid protocols, she created agreements based on mutual benefit and emotional trust. The Outer Rim Confederation was her greatest achievement. It was not a government in any traditional sense. There were no central laws, no ruling council, no mandatory taxes. Instead, it was a voluntary association of species who had agreed to help each other and share knowledge freely. The Council had declared it an impossible form of organization. Civilizations needed hierarchy, they said. Someone had to be in charge, or there would be chaos. But the Confederation worked. Species who had been enemies for centuries found ways to cooperate. Trade flowed freely between worlds that had never trusted each other before. Scientific discoveries were shared instantly across hundreds of light years. "Any word from Marcus's research stations?" Jinwoo asked. Sarah's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's the best news of all. The Quantum Empathy Network is ready for testing." Marcus Chen had become the Outer Rim's leading technology developer, but his methods would have horrified Council scientists. Instead of following careful research protocols, he encouraged his teams to experiment wildly and make mistakes often. His laboratories looked like chaotic workshops, where beings from dozens of species worked together on projects that seemed impossible. His latest creation was based on a discovery Sarah had made about human neural patterns. Humans could form emotional connections with other beings that operated on a quantum level. With the right technology, these connections could be used for instant communication across any distance. "We'll have real-time communication between all human settlements," Sarah explained. "But more than that, we'll be able to share emotional states and intuitive insights. It's like creating a giant nervous system that spans the galaxy." Jinwoo stopped walking and stared at her. "Sarah, do you realize what this means? It means we've become something the galaxy has never seen before. A civilization that gets stronger through diversity instead of weaker. A species that can adapt to anything because we learn from everyone we meet." That evening, Jinwoo stood in his office reviewing intelligence reports from Council space. The news was disturbing. 3 member species had formally requested to leave the Council and join the Outer Rim Confederation. The hierarchy was reportedly furious about these defections. More troubling was the economic data. Human-influenced trade networks were proving more efficient than Council bureaucracy. Worlds that had joined the Confederation were experiencing rapid growth and innovation. Meanwhile, traditional Council worlds were stagnating under rigid regulations and hierarchical management. "Sir?" His communications officer knocked on the door. "Priority message? From Admiral Lee?" Jinwoo accepted the transmission. Lee's face appeared on his screen, and she looked worried. "Mr. President, we're detecting unusual fleet movements near the Council border. It looks like they're positioning forces for possible military action." "Against us?" "Unknown, sir. But our intelligence sources in Zeleny space report increased rhetoric about containing the human threat in recent hierarchy communications." Jinwoo felt a chill run down his spine. "How would you assess our defensive capabilities?" If they come at us with traditional tactics, we can hold our own." "But sir," Lee paused, "I don't think they understand what they're dealing with. We're not the same species that left Council space 5 years ago." She was right. Exile had changed humanity in fundamental ways. Living in the harsh Outer Rim had forced them to become more adaptable, more cooperative, more creative than they had ever been in the safe, regulated environment of Council space. They had also made allies. The Vorthak had pledged to defend human worlds with their planet-shaking abilities. The thermal dancers could disable electronic systems with their energy manipulation powers. A dozen other species had offered various forms of military support. More importantly, humans had learned to fight as part of integrated, multi-species units. Their fleets included ships designed by 5 different species, crewed by mixed teams who could coordinate through quantum empathy networks. "Keep monitoring the situation," Jinwoo told Lee. "But prepare our response options. If the Council wants to see what humanity has become, we should be ready to show them." After ending the transmission, Jinwoo walked to his window and looked out at the crystal city below. Children from 3 different species were playing together in the park, their laughter creating harmonious echoes in the crystal structures. The Council had banished humanity to prevent them from spreading their chaotic influence. Instead, they had given humanity the freedom to become something wonderful and strange, something that threatened the very foundations of their rigid civilization. Jinwoo had a feeling the galaxy was about to change in ways no one could predict. High Arbiter Zethval of the Hierarchy stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, his blue skin darker than usual with anger. The great chamber felt different now. 3 species sections sat empty: the thermal communes, the Neptari Splinter Collective, and the Crystal Echoes had all formally withdrawn to join the Human Confederation. We face the greatest threat to galactic civilization in recorded history, the Arbiter announced. The human contamination spreads like a disease, destroying the order we have maintained for millennia. The 100 from Tessavae, end quote. The 100 from Mintonit, the 100 from Minnesota. The remaining council members shifted nervously in their seats. The Mantari representative clicked her claws anxiously. Arbiter. Our latest intelligence reports suggest the humans have developed capabilities we do not understand. They coordinate their fleets through methods our military analysts cannot decode. Impossible, the Arbiter snapped. No species can communicate faster than quantum transmission networks. The humans lack the technology for true instantaneous coordination. Counselor Nara Lin of the Zelani stood slowly. With respect, Arbiter, our scientists believe they have achieved something beyond our current understanding. They call it quantum empathy, the ability to share emotional and intuitive states across any distance. The chamber fell silent. Even the ever-present hum of translation devices seemed muted. Furthermore, Naralin continued, our economic projections show that Confederation worlds are experiencing growth rates 300% higher than Council worlds. Their innovation indices are off our measurement scales because they ignore proper safety protocols, the Arbiter retorted. They mix species without regard for biological compatibility. They allow chaotic collaboration between beings who should be organized in proper hierarchies. Their methods are dangerous and unstable. Admiral Ket Moore, of the Vegan Collective, activated her display screen. Arbiter, I must report that 17 of our colony worlds have submitted formal requests to join the Confederation. Our military commanders report increasing difficulty maintaining order when personnel see human methods producing superior results. The Arbiter's skin shifted to an alarming shade of purple. This is exactly why we must act decisively. The human chaos cannot be allowed to spread further. In the observation gallery, Ambassador Tara Singh listened to the debate with growing alarm. She had served as a liaison officer with human forces before the banishment, and she knew the Council was making a terrible mistake. Humans were not chaotic. They were adaptive. The difference was crucial, but the hierarchy refused to understand it. I have ordered Fleet Admiral Gorth Prime to position our forces along the Outer Rim border, the Arbiter continued. We will contain this contamination before it spreads to the core worlds. Contain how? Asked the Mantari representative. Military blockade, followed by systematic occupation of human settlements. We will restore proper order to the Outer Rim and relocate the human population to controlled reservation worlds where they cannot influence other species. The Zelani counselor stood again. Arbiter, I must strongly advise against military action. Our intelligence suggests the humans have formed military alliances with numerous Outer Rim species. This could escalate into a full-scale war. A war we will win, the Arbiter said coldly. The hierarchy commands the most powerful fleet in known space. No collection of rabble and refugees can stand against our disciplined forces. 3 days later, Fleet Admiral Gorth Prime surveyed his forces from the bridge of the hierarchy flagship times Perfect Order *. 250 ships stretched across space in precise formation. Each vessel held its exact position, following regulations that had proven effective for 1,000 years. Admiral, we're detecting unusual activity near the border, his sensor officer reported. Multiple ships approaching from Confederation space. Numbers and composition? Difficult to assess, sir. Their formation patterns don't match any known tactical doctrine. Approximate count: 40 to 50 vessels of mixed species design. Gorth Prime studied the tactical display with satisfaction. 5 to 1 odds in his favor. Against a motley collection of alien ships, crewed by beings who had never learned proper military discipline. This would be over quickly. Admiral Lee sends greetings. Came a transmission from the human fleet. Admiral Haejin Lee appeared on the communication screen, wearing a simple uniform that would have horrified council military inspectors. No formal insignia, no rigid posture, no ceremonial decorations. She looked like she was having a casual conversation with an old friend. "Admiral Gorth Prime," she said with a slight smile. "I understand you're here to establish a blockade of Confederation space." "Correct. By order of the Galactic Council, all human settlements are to be placed under protective custody. You will stand down your forces and prepare for occupation." Lee's smile didn't waver. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. The Confederation has democratically voted to decline your generous offer. This is not a negotiation. Surrender now, or face the consequences." "Admiral," Lee said gently, "I really hope you'll reconsider. We'd rather be friends than enemies." Gorth Prime cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "Initiate attack pattern Alpha 7. Target their command ships first." The hierarchy fleet moved forward in perfect formation, weapons charging according to standard protocols. It was a beautiful sight. 250 ships advancing like a single organism, each captain following their predetermined role in the tactical plan. The human response looked like chaos. Ships scattered in all directions with no apparent pattern. Some moved toward the hierarchy fleet. Others seemed to be retreating. A few began spinning in complex spirals that served no military purpose Gorth Prime could understand. "Sir, we're having trouble maintaining target locks," the weapons officer reported. "Their movement patterns are unpredictable. Fire anyway. Concentrate on the largest concentrations of enemy ships." The hierarchy fleet opened fire with devastating precision. Beams of energy lanced out toward the scattered human forces. Most shots found their targets. But something was wrong. Instead of taking damage, the human ships seemed to absorb the energy and redirect it somehow. The scattered formation that had looked chaotic suddenly revealed its purpose. They were positioned to catch and redirect the hierarchy's own weapons fire. "Sir, our targeting systems are reporting multiple anomalies. The enemy ships are coordinating their evasive maneuvers faster than our computers can calculate firing solutions." Gorth Prime watched in growing horror as his perfectly organized assault fell apart. Human ships moved like they were sharing a single mind, but faster and more fluidly than any hive mind the galaxy had known. They seemed to anticipate his orders before he gave them. Then the counterattack began. It was unlike anything in hierarchy military doctrine. Instead of focusing fire on his ships, the humans seemed to be targeting empty space. Energy beams and projectiles created a complex web of intersecting paths between the two fleets. "Admiral," his science officer called out urgently, "they're not trying to destroy us. They're herding us into a gravitational anomaly." Gorth Prime finally understood. The human fleet had positioned itself to drive his forces toward a dangerous region of space, where gravitational fields would tear his ships apart. They were using the environment as a weapon. But they weren't doing it to destroy his fleet. They were doing it to save them from something else. "Emergency sensors to maximum range," he ordered. "What's behind us?" The answer appeared on his screens and made his blood run cold. A massive swarm of void wraiths was approaching from deep space, creatures that fed on metal and energy. His fleet had accidentally positioned itself directly in their path. The humans were trying to push his ships to safety. Admiral Gorth Prime stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. The void wraiths were less than an hour away, a seething mass of energy-hungry creatures that would devour his entire fleet. The humans had somehow detected the swarm before his own sensors and were actively trying to save his forces. "Admiral Lee, this is Admiral Gorth Prime," he transmitted urgently. "We detect the void wraith swarm. Our forces are prepared to coordinate defensive maneuvers." Lee's face appeared on his screen again, but now her expression was serious and focused. Behind her, He could see crew members from multiple species working together with fluid efficiency that made his own bridge crew look sluggish. "Admiral, we need to move your ships through the gravity well at coordinates 127.3 by 45.7. Our Vorthak allies can create a resonance field to accelerate your passage, but your crews need to trust us completely." Trust. The word felt strange to Gorth Prime. Military operations were based on discipline and following orders, not trust between enemies. But the alternative was watching his fleet get consumed by creatures that existed in the void between dimensions. "What do you need us to do?" "Turn off your tactical computers and let your pilots fly by instinct. Our quantum empathy network will guide you, but only if your crews stop trying to follow rigid patterns." Gorth Prime felt everything he understood about military strategy crumble around him. Turn off the computers? Fly by instinct? It was madness. But the void wraiths were closing fast, and he was out of alternatives. "All ships. This is Fleet Command. Disable automated tactical systems and switch to manual control. Follow the human ships and trust their guidance." What followed was the most terrifying and beautiful hour of Gorth Prime's military career. The human fleet moved through space like living water, flowing around gravitational obstacles and dangerous energy fields with impossible grace. More importantly, they somehow transmitted their intentions directly to his pilots' minds. His crews began flying in ways no hierarchy manual had ever described. Ships twisted through three-dimensional spirals that should have caused disorientation and panic. Instead, his pilots reported feeling more alert and connected than they had ever experienced. The mixed Confederation fleet worked as a single organism, but not like a hive mind. Each ship retained its individuality while contributing to a greater pattern. Vorthak vessels sang harmonic resonances that opened safe passages through gravity wells. Thermal dancer ships created energy fields that concealed the fleet from the void wraith's senses. Human ships coordinated everything, somehow maintaining awareness of all other vessels simultaneously while adapting to changing conditions faster than any computer system could calculate. When they finally reached safety beyond the gravity well, Gorth Prime discovered that his fleet had lost exactly 0 ships. Every vessel had made the passage safely, guided by beings they had come to destroy. "Admiral," his communications officer reported quietly, "we're receiving a general transmission from President Park." The screen changed to show Jinwoo Park standing on the bridge of a human vessel. Behind him, the observation windows showed the crystal spires of a massive space station that shouldn't have been possible to build. "Admiral Gorth Prime, Fleet Commanders of the Hierarchy, I want to thank you for giving us the chance to help. I know this situation is confusing, so let me explain what just happened." Park gestured to display screens showing the tactical situation. "Your fleet was being guided into an ambush by creatures that feed on organized energy patterns. The void wraiths are attracted to rigid formations and predictable behaviors. They would have consumed your entire force." Gorth Prime felt his understanding of military strategy shift fundamentally. "You mean our formation discipline made us vulnerable?" In this situation, yes. The galaxy is full of threats that can't be defeated through traditional tactics. That's why we've learned to adapt and flow like water, instead of standing rigid like stone." Dr. Sarah Kim appeared beside Park on the transmission. "Admiral, I'd like to offer you something. Our research stations have been broadcasting educational programs throughout the galaxy. We call them emotional evolution courses. They teach beings how to expand their consciousness and work together more effectively. Your crews performed remarkably well once they stopped trying to follow rigid protocols," Park added. "With proper training, they could become even more capable." Gorth Prime looked around his bridge. His officers were still operating the controls manually, and they moved with a fluid coordination he had never seen before. They had tasted something new, and he could see in their eyes that they didn't want to go back to the old way. "What are you offering?" he asked quietly. "Join us. Park said simply. Not as conquered subjects, but as equal partners in building something better. The Confederation is voluntary. Any species can leave at any time, and every member has an equal voice in our decisions. The transmission shifted to show images of Confederation worlds. Gorth Prime saw cities where multiple species lived and worked together seamlessly. He saw children from different races playing together without fear or suspicion. He saw technological marvels that shouldn't have been possible, created through cooperation between beings who had once been enemies. This is what humanity's power really is, Park explained. Not the ability to conquer others, but the ability to help others become more than they thought possible. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to help it grow. Gorth Prime realized that everything he had believed about civilization was wrong. The hierarchy's rigid order hadn't created strength. It had created stagnation. The Council's rules hadn't maintained peace. They had prevented growth. Humanity's chaotic approach wasn't chaotic at all. It was adaptive. It was alive in ways that rigid systems could never be. Admiral, his tactical officer whispered, we're receiving similar transmissions on all frequencies. The humans are broadcasting to every ship in our fleet, and to Council space itself. Gorth Prime understood what was happening. This wasn't a military victory or a political conquest. It was an invitation to evolve. Ships began defecting from his fleet one by one. Not in anger or rebellion, but in hope. Crews who had experienced the quantum empathy connection didn't want to return to isolation and rigid hierarchy. Within hours, only a dozen ships remained loyal to the hierarchy. The rest had requested permission to join the Confederation. Back on the Council homeworld, High Arbiter Zethval watched his perfect civilization crumble as world after world voted to leave and join the humans. The rigid order that had seemed so strong was revealed to be brittle and lifeless. But on a crystal space station in the Outer Rim, Jinwoo Park stood before a gathering of representatives from hundreds of species. Former enemies worked together to design new forms of government based on cooperation rather than control. The galaxy is changing, he announced. Not because humanity conquered it, but because we proved that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. That chaos and order can work together to create something beautiful. The applause that followed came from beings who had once seemed incompatible with life itself. But humans had learned the secret that the Council had missed. Every species had something valuable to contribute if given the freedom to be themselves. Humanity had been banished for being too chaotic to fit into galactic civilization. In response, they had created a new form of civilization that could fit anyone willing to grow. And the galaxy would never be the same.